Hello, everyone, and welcome to Advancing Employment's third webinar in our series. We're going to give everyone another minute or two before we get started. You should be seeing Tracy, our keynote speaker for this afternoon. And right now, everyone's on mute. Okay. Again, my name is Paige Tidwell Kaysen. I'm with IHGD in Advancing Employment. And today we are have the pleasure of having Dr. Rackensperger with us, and she's also here at IHGD. She's a PhD in faculty and is one of the instructors for our Interdisciplinary Disability Studies Certificate Program. And she's also one of our team members for Advancing Employment. So, and I believe Tracy's going to talk a little bit more about herself as we get going. On your dashboard, you should see a section labeled questions. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to enter those. I'll be monitoring those throughout Tracy's presentation. We will also pause a couple times over the next hour and ask for opportunities to ask questions. So without further ado, keep in mind Tracy is going to be using a device to do her presentation. And I believe the audio is going to be great, but if you have any concerns or questions about the audio, please put that in the question box. Okay, now, without further ado, here's Tracy.
I am so happy to be here today to talk with you about seeing and facilitating the employment potential of those typically labeled nonverbal. Before we begin, let me introduce myself. My name is Dr. Tracy Rackensperger. I am a public service faculty member at the Institute on Human Development and Disability, University of Georgia. I have over 20 years professional experience working with people labeled nonverbal. I, myself, can be labeled as nonverbal because I use devices to speak to people who don't know me. I have over 40 experience using augmentative and alternative communication AAC. There is a video trailer about me you can view on your own time. It's on our Advancing Employment website. Now, since I use a device to speak, this webinar will get boring unless you participate. This is an interactive webinar. Participants will be asked to actively share their thoughts throughout the hour. Today, you will learn how to utilize strategies to better understand how to improve our support of people needing diverse communication methods to facilitate employment, work through employment barriers, and finally, see potential, dispel stereotypes, and seek to understand a job seeker's ideal conditions for success.
Tracy, did you want to do a poll?
Yeah.
Okay, so before Tracy gets started again, we're going to do a couple of polls. And so here's the first one. So if y'all would just answer those. We'll give a couple more seconds. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. We got one more. Looks like, as you can see, most people, well, maybe you're not going to be able to see. Oh, here you go. Here's the results. 64% of y'all are with a poor employment provider, 31% with state VR agency, 12% with a day program. Very good. Okay, we got one more. If I can get to it, here we go. Here's the second one. A couple more seconds. All right, very good. There we go. And it looks like most folks have either sometimes, but rarely, provide employment services for people who are labeled as nonverbal. Very interesting. So hopefully everyone will have an opportunity to learn something new today. All right, Tracy, back to you. All right, wait a minute.
So let's start with, how do we utilize strategies to better understand how to improve our support of people needing diverse communication methods to facilitate employment? First, let us start by discussing how we may view people labeled nonverbal and how changing our perceptions could lead to better employment outcomes. When we think of someone labeled as nonverbal, we might think about someone who has the inability to communicate. We might think his or her ability to comprehend, detect, or apply language and speech to engage in discourse effectively with others is compromised. We may assume they may have the inability to find or formulate the words to express oneself even though knowing what one wants to say. If their communication is difficult, they may become frustrated and challenging behavior could become an issue. This can lead us to believe in all kinds of assumptions. Some of our assumptions may be accurate, some not. I have listed some of the big assumptions made about me over the years. When I first went to vocational rehab in my home state back in high school, I really felt like they saw me as unemployable. Fortunately, when I came back years later, they were more helpful. People think I'm totally dependent on care and even call the police when I'm out by myself. That could be a topic for a whole other webinar. In college, when I was applying for benefits, people gave my mom the information because people assumed I could not read. People almost always assume trouble with communication with having an intellectual disability, which is wrongly associated with incompetence. I have been asked if I live in a group home. I have even been asked if I live in a nursing home. For the record, I live with my pet dog and nobody else. Finally, I can write in text. Some people act so shocked at this. Functionally, nonverbal essentially means when an individual cannot gain attention, be social, ask questions, initiate and/or close conversations, and/or express requests through typical verbal means alone. Thus, those who struggle to communicate basic wants and needs met by communicating those needs to others would be considered functionally nonverbal. People who are labeled nonverbal can be considered as only using a few words verbally to communicate. However, there is a huge difference between being nonverbal and being able to communicate. For example, challenging behavior is communication. Individuals labeled nonverbal frequently demonstrate challenging behaviors that may serve a variety of communication purposes. But thousands of people have found multiple means of effectively and appropriately communicating. Now, why do I keep using the quotations on the word nonverbal? I believe it was Stephen Hawking who said, being unable to speak is not the same as having nothing to say. Now, my mom used to say, for someone who can't talk, you sure have a lot to say. I am actually plenty verbal. People who have known me for a while can understand my natural speech almost all the time. Strangers usually have no clue what I am saying unless I use augmentative communication. So I use quotes around nonverbal because it's more about other people's definitional label for people who they can't understand, rather than for people who are incapable of verbalizing. Again, it also goes back to what we ascribe to the concept of what nonverbal is. We need to lose our assumptions we may make about people who are labeled nonverbal.
Okay. If anyone has any questions, they are welcome to put them in the question box
Before
there.
moving on, I would like to open this up for questions.
Sorry about that, Tracy.
Oh,
Well, we have one question that has come in. You want me to read it to you?
yeah.
Okay. The first one is, if I'm working with an individual who does not have a lot of ways to communicate, how do I avoid making the assumptions that you've listed?
That is a great question. That is a great question. What you can do is you can first talk on to them and then you can talk to their family. What you can do is you can first talk to them and then you can talk to their family. And as I have up on that is a great question. What you can do is you can first talk to them and then you can talk to their family. And as I have up on the screen, you can do those things too. And as I have up on the screen, you can do those things too.
Great, thank you. All right. Moving on.
Any more questions come on. Do not eat. Be any more questions? Come on, do not be shy.
We've got one from Joanne, and she wants to know what type of device that you're using to communicate.
I will explain that later.
So Joanne, you just gotta hold on.
But thank you for asking. I will
Oh.
Why don't we go ahead and get back to the PowerPoint? Is this off?
Power off. Bluetooth mode.
Sorry about that, folks.
Thank
Technical
you for your
difficulty.
questions. So let's move on to the next part of this webinar. How do we work through employment barriers? Here are some facts. People who are labeled nonverbal and use augmentative and alternative communication (AAC) and their families have goals for life after high school. More than 95% of individuals with complex communication needs are unemployed. So a colleague of mine who I work with, David McNaughton, he is at Penn State University. He and his colleagues do research about employment and people who use augmentative communication. We even have done a study about telework. Anyway, he and his colleagues identified barriers to employment. The first set of barriers were reported by people with cerebral palsy, and the second set of barriers relate to people with autism spectrum disorders. Societal prejudice, attitudinal barriers, educational barriers, technological barriers, policy and funding, personal care support service, transportation, social interactions, expression of emotions and behavior, use of AAC technology, changes in schedules and routines, acquisition of new skills, and provision of employment supports. As you can see, a number of these barriers are not unique to those labeled nonverbal. For this webinar, we will just focus on addressing communication barriers. A big way to address communication barriers is through the provision of augmentative and alternative communication (AAC). So what is augmentative and alternative communication (AAC)? Augmentative and alternative communication refers to ways other than speech that are used to send a message from one person to another. AAC helps provide communication for individuals who are unable to be easily understood. AAC is utilized by individuals whose speech is either difficult to understand or non-existent. AAC methods can range from basic sign language to sophisticated voice output devices. How do we support competitive employment for people who are nonverbal? We do it through various communication techniques. There are two broad kinds of augmentative communication: low-tech and high-tech. Low-tech refers to a level of assistive technology characterized by the use of simple or no technology. When we think of technology, we think of electronics, computers, etc. Fancy, expensive things. Low-tech can include such technological components or no technology at all. Most of the materials used to fabricate low-tech AAC can be found in everyday stores and are relatively low in cost. Low-tech strategies are easy to implement and change. For those just beginning to understand or investigate AAC, low-tech options may be very attractive to try and explore with people who have difficulty communicating verbally. Low-tech devices are easy to learn, inexpensive, and makeable with common items. Picture boards are simple to make, easy to use interfaces for people who are unable to speak or see clearly. They are intended to augment the existing communication processes when persons are unable to speak and need to make simple requests. Persons use these boards to make simple requests. Before computers were invented, simple picture boards were made with pictures to describe typical wants and needs. Person can point to a picture of a stapler to say, "I'll staple that for you." Or a filing cabinet to say, "Did they need to be filed?" Communication boards are still utilized today. Graphical communication boards have no or low technology requirements and utilize pictures, drawings, abstract symbols, and/or text as symbols. Examples are communication books, wallets, or vests that are referenced by pointing, eye gaze, touching, or scanning that is activated through switches or by indicating to someone else. The symbols on a graphical system may be represented visually and/or tactually. These systems tend to be relatively inexpensive and are often homemade. When selecting AAC strategies, it is important to consider the individual's ability to recognize and understand speech, photos, line drawings, and/or text. For example, some people may understand that photographs represent an item, but may not understand that the printed word represents the same object. This is because words are more abstract than photographs or objects. For someone who does not understand text alone, objects, photographs, or line drawings can be used instead. Multiple picture pages and/or photographs can be bounded together to form communication books. People with little or no control of their hands may be able to use a laser pointer attached to their heads to select messages. There's been a lot of buzz about the iPad's potential as an augmentative, alternative communication device since Apple introduced the revolutionary, tablet-sized machine. For many users with speech disabilities, the iPad's portability, varied functionality, large touch screen and relatively cheap price, not to mention the cool factor, make it an attractive alternative to more traditional communication devices. In addition to serving as an AAC device, the iPad also can be used to access the internet, watch movies, read books, play games, send and receive photos and email, listen to music, and do other functions performed by computers or smartphones, except for taking pictures and making phone calls. I currently use for daily use an Android-based device from Google. I also have a really old iPad and am using an even older dedicated device called an Echo to answer your questions today.
Mm.
My dedicated device called an Echo is a high-tech device. High-tech methods include voice output devices having either touch screens or static features. Static features are components that are fixed, such as a keyboard. Computer-based systems have features of a voice output device housed in a regular laptop. There are also dedicated synthesized speech generating systems, dedicated recorded speech systems, and hybrid systems. While high-tech AAC devices are often expensive and require evaluations, they offer an extraordinary level of independence to people. AAC is making it possible for many people with complex communication needs to succeed in employment. People with disabilities need to receive technology that enables them to perform the functions of a job. Before moving on, I would like to open this up for questions.
Anybody have any questions for Tracy? They're welcome to put those in, and I'll read them out. And we'll also have more time once she has finished her PowerPoint. All right, so here's another question, Tracy. They're asking, how do I deal with families who worry about giving someone other ways to communicate on the job will hamper their future ability to speak?
I have heard this. So, many times I have heard this so many times. First, I would point to the research that does say that communications communication devices actually help people to communicate verbally. First, I would point her to the research that does say that communication devices actually help people to communicate verbally.
All right. We've got a couple more questions.
Secondly, you can help them understand that they need leave way to communicate now. So they can do things and they can't be told. Oh, it's better for you to talk later. Than to do things is now. Secondly, you can help them understand that they need a way to communicate now so they can do things and they can be told, oh, it's better for you to talk later than to do things as now. it would be like denying a person a wheelchair because they might walk some day it would be like denying a person a wheelchair because they might walk someday.
That's a great point, Tracy. Very good. So can I get to the other couple questions real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. And two of them are somewhat similar. And this is coming from Joanne again and connecting it to Stevie's question as well. So one is, how do you find qualified evaluators? But also, if you're used to having access to speech language professionals, but they're not as beneficial as they had hoped, where can you go to find some guidance on the AAC devices?
That is a good question. That is a good question. I would ask me. Or tools for life, I would ask me, or tools for life. There is a shortage of people who work now. Ah, A, C. And I have found universities choose to be A. Good. Help. That is a good question. I would ask me your tools for life. There is a shortage of people who know us. C and I have found universities to be a good help.
All right, great. So we've got one more, but let's hold that till the towards the end. We've got about 15 more minutes. So if you have any more questions, everybody, just go ahead and put them in the question box and we'll have some time towards the end.
Thank you for your questions. So finally, let's discuss this question. How do we see potential, dispel stereotypes, and seek to understand a job seeker's ideal conditions for success? We need to re-examine our traditional views of success of people we have labeled as nonverbal. Is this real inclusion? Is this real success based on potential? Be very careful not to get caught up in thinking about system. Think outside the box. People having high expectations of me, as well as staying person-centered, not system-centered, and my using natural generic supports as much as possible were and continue to be three of the most important things that shaped my life. As I said in my Speak Up blog post, my family had high expectations of me from the beginning and used natural generic supports as much as possible. I live on my own and have support people come throughout the day to assist me with activities of daily living. I am a public service faculty member at the University of Georgia. Okay, after I do these types of presentations, some individuals say to me, but what about the guy who has intellectual disabilities who cannot use complex AAC devices? Or the person with multiple health issues? Or the kid who is not going to get their PhD? Oftentimes, people view intellectual disability as having more impact on quality of life and pursuing life goals than other disabilities. I cannot count the number of times people say I am so successful because I am so smart. No, it's because of what I was discussing that I am so successful. Smartness does not solely impact success. Ask yourself what is their highest potential based on their true abilities, not the current support services available. How can we create an environment where their highest potential can be reached? Thank you for coming today. In the time we have left, does anyone have any questions? Article 2 of 4.
All right, Tracy, we have one that was from earlier. Quinlan wants to know, what is the best way to ask someone who is nonverbal, in quotes, what their preferred method of communication is?
Just meet. Ask. There. Them. Just ask them. If they can't really TWLL. Tell you can. Observe them. See into how they're communicating. Just ask them. If they can really tell you, you can observe them, see how they're communicating.
That's simple as that, right? All right, we have about 7 more minutes. If anyone wants to type in some more questions. We got one more, Tracy, when you're ready.
I love questions and not me. Just sat sitting here. Talking. I love questions and not me just sitting here talking.
That's right. Okay, we got 2 more questions, and I want to combine them. One is, how do you do your job here at University of Georgia? And then also, they want to know how old you are.
Well, I am. And my and I use a variety of technology to do my fun job. Well, I am in my 40s and I use a variety of technology to do my job. I would check out that tower. Trailer for more about me. Well, I am in my 40s and I use a variety of technology to do my job. I would check out the trailer for more about me.
Yes, do so, definitely. And for those who don't know Tracy, she has, again, for several years been, as I mentioned before, teaching one of the instructors for our interdisciplinary disability study certificate program, which is an undergraduate certificate here at UGA. And her classes are always jam-packed. There's waiting lists because, it's unique seeing someone, be able to engage and do everything we all do, but just in a different manner. And it's great to have that opportunity to show that just because you get one thing that you need assistance with doesn't mean you can't do everything like everybody else. So great. We have one other question is, do you perform assessments for AAC devices for individuals?
I don't have the countryside
Oh.
credentials. 4. That. But I am available to consult with, and you can email me. I don't have the credentials for it, but I'm available to consult with them. You can email me. I also am available to do workshops and that. Kind of thing. I don't have the credentials for it, but I'm available to consult with them. You can email me. I also am available to do workshops and that kind of thing.
Very good. Okay, well, we're out of time today. If any of y'all have any additional questions or just want to engage in conversation, as Tracy mentioned, she loves to engage in conversation, so don't hesitate to reach out to her. And I think her email is there on her last slide. And then after, is there something you want to say?
I don't know.
No. And then over the next few days, we'll have this webinar will be uploaded to Advancing Employment's website where it'll be archived. And also it has a transcript, which you will be able to access within the next couple of hours if you log back in using the link that you received previously. Well, we certainly appreciate everyone joining us today. Our next webinar is going to be at the end of April with Doug Crandall. We hope that you'll join us. And we thank you all very much for joining us today. Y'all have a great day. Bye-bye. Thank you. Yeah.